And please welcome our host, Christopher Rausch. What's going on, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, you rock stars of the Kick-Ass Nation? It is I, Christopher Rausch, your No Excuses coach, and we are back here for another episode of the Raw and Unscripted Show, where we help you overcome your tolerations and your excuses to live a kick-ass, unstoppable life. So thank you for tuning in. If you're watching here live on the video cast, thank you so much. We are proud to be here. We're on YouTube, we're on LinkedIn, we're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, we're all over the place, but also you guys might be listening to us on podcast in one of 27 countries I think we're in now. So thank you so much from the bottom of my heart, wherever it is that you're listening, for tuning into the show each and every week. Our desire, our goal, our intention is to bring you content every single week that you guys can apply in your life, so that progressively you take that 1% rule of growing every single day just a little bit, so that compounded over time, you look back and go, wow, I've changed a lot in the last 6 months. I've changed a lot in the last year. And so oftentimes we're looking for this fast, executable answer that's going to change things overnight. But that's not the case, ladies and gentlemen. Here's what happens is the fact that it's taken you this long in life to get to where it is you are today. And so you have to have a little bit of patience and a lot of tenacity to be able to switch who it is that you are and who it is that you want to become slowly, progressively, every single day. And in this show, I encourage you to take 3 strategies away from this conversation tonight, start applying them in your life, show up again next week, take those 3 strategies, apply them in your life, and then progressively over time, like I said, you're going to look back and go, wow, I'm not the same person that I used to be. I'm not as anxious. I'm not as fearful. I'm taking more imperfect action. I'm not worrying about the judgment of other people. And as you continue to do that, your self-confidence builds. And as your confidence builds, you stop running away from things via your short-term gratifications, your alcohol, your sex, your shopping, your Netflix, whatever it is, because you're so excited to live life, you don't need to run away from it anymore. And that builds upon itself. And then you're making an impact in the world, and that builds upon itself. And then you're showing up and you're electrifying people because you're living on purpose and you're living with passion. That's what it is to be alive, ladies and gentlemen, because truthfully, why are you here? You're here to make an impact in the world. You're here to share your special gifts and leave a legacy that you're proud of. So ask yourself this question. I want you to think about this very, very deeply. If I died tomorrow, ooh, Chris, he's already talking about death. If I died tomorrow, who would show up and what would they say? If I died tomorrow, who would show up and what would they say? I asked myself that question when I was at a funeral back in 2008. And the answer saddened me, because I thought 10 or 15 people will show up and they'll bring Jack Daniels and Bon Jovi and Motley Crue records, and they're going to talk about all the stupid shit Chris did. Oh my God, remember that time he fell asleep and we piled food on top of his head? Remember that time he did this? Remember that time he did this? And then the postscript would be, oh yeah, he was a 7th grade dropout who lived in the backseat of a station wagon and ultimately got his master's degree and changed the world. And that's what I've done. And that's what I continue to do every day. But at that point, because of what I was doing, I would have been remembered as somebody different. And so at that point, I decided to go home and I wrote my eulogy. And ever since 2008, and I was already very, very, very successful, but ever since 2008, I've woken up every single day with the intention to leave that legacy that Christopher Rausch would have fought for what's right and what's fair. He will have risked for which that mattered. And he will left the earth a better place for who he was and what he did. And that, ladies and gentlemen, when you have that in your heart of hearts, when you wake up every day with a mission and a passion and a purpose, nothing can stop you. Because every single day, if this is the last thing I ever do and my son watches this tomorrow, he's going to say, Dad was on point. Dad was making a difference in the world. Dad was living his legacy and his purpose. And that's what I want for you guys. So take down notes, take action on those notes. And ladies and gentlemen, you will change your life. I promise you. So if you're tuning in and you're watching us live, feel free to chime into the conversation, leave us comments, ask us questions. This is an interactive conversation. If you're listening to us on podcast, always feel free to show up here to the live video cast and engage with us. This is a conversation with you. It's not just something you're going to actively and passively listen to and go, oh, wow, that was inspirational, and move on with your day. Take action on your life. And so I'm excited to have my guest on tonight. We had a conversation, I think back somewhere in January or February when I booked this episode, and I'm going to ask her, but I can't remember exactly how she got referred to the show, because a lot of them are referrals. But I remember having this conversation with this lady, and we just kept going on. I said, we got to save this for the show. So without any further ado, please welcome Dianne Bennnett to the Raw Unscripted Show. Dianne, welcome, and thank you for being here. How are you?
Thank you so much, Chris. I'm glad to be here. It's hard to believe that was end of January, February, and that we are now in July. Time is flying.
It is. Do you have your wings out?
Try it.
You have your wings out? You're flying? Are you flying? How did we get introduced? I can't remember that. Usually I leave a note for myself, but I didn't leave a note in this situation.
Yeah.
I'll remember that.
We were both, I think, presenting at Tina Kadish's one of her summits. She had a Hope Summit, I believe,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
honoring her daughter's passing, and
That's
I think
right.
we both connected there. I think we're all connected. I think by the experience of grief. So
Ooh, yes, we are. And she was
yeah,
actually my guest last week. I don't know if you had a chance to see it, but she was the guest last week. And I asked her, I said, what was one of the lowest points in your life? And what did you learn from that? Knowing her story and figuring she's going
yeah,
to talk about that. And then she didn't talk about that. And I didn't want to come out and directly ask her about her daughter's death because I was like, well, maybe she doesn't want to talk about it right now. Maybe that's not in her. And so I kind of had to ask her those questions. And then finally she goes, well, I said, oh, you wrote 2 books, right? And she goes, oh, yeah. And I said,
out
what were the
that way.
titles again? And so that's how we got her to talk about the story. And she goes, oh, it's not that I didn't want to talk about it. She goes, I just didn't even think about it in those moments. And I figured I would talk about it later. So my first question for you, we got Dennis Nermella coming in from China. What's up, Dennis? Thank you for tuning in,
Hey,
brother. I
Dennis.
appreciate you. What do you want to get across to people most tonight? When you think about how I opened the show, and you've seen the show before, I'm here to help people get past their excuses and their tolerations and live their own individual life. What do you want to get across most people tonight?
I think what's most important to me is I want people to learn how to stand in their power. Right. I think that each of us are very unique, and we've all been given very unique gifts and skills and experiences as a result for the very
Sure.
unique journey that each of us have to walk. And I think in order for us to really um, become and achieve what we can achieve as a humanity requires each of us to be comfortable, I think, standing in our own and being comfortable standing in that power. And that's not easy. It has not been easy. It's been quite a journey for me. I'm still on the journey,
Of
um,
course, we all are.
and I'm sure we all are. Exactly. So.
So what does that mean? If I asked you to go deeper on that standing in our power, what is the power? What specifically is the power?
Yeah. So in the power is a lot of things, right? So I think it's being comfortable with who we are, right?
Yeah,
So there's an element, I believe, of authenticity in being comfortable in who we are, being accepting of who we are, embracing who we are, and in that journey in itself, I think that allows us to show up very differently for people. And we have a surprise guest here who wants to join us. My
we
dog.
do.
Can you see him?
Oh, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Where's that puppy? Where's
Yeah.
that puppy? Oh, floppy
She's
ears.
jealous. She's jealous. But there's a journey of authenticity, and then I think the other piece here is recognizing that we don't walk through our lives alone, right? We're all very connected, and the way that we show up has the ability to impact anything and everything around us. And I think that in today's world, in particular, as busy as we are, as fast paced, as very um, we live life at the surface, and there's so much depth, I think, for us to reach beyond, and our capacity and our reach, I think, changes when we recognize that. So
It's true. It's true. I know in my life, I tell people the story. I used to be a suit and tie speaker. I didn't wear the hat backwards, the bandana. I wore a suit and tie and I didn't swear. And I came off of a multi-speaker event and I was like, this is not me. I'm a rocker. I'm a biker. I'm a smartass. I swear. And I'm like, if I'm going to suck at this, I'm going to suck at this being me. And that's when I kind of shed the skin of being a people pleaser and trying to do everything for everybody else's agreement, I guess, if you will. And
yeah.
so for me, that was the turning point. And I left a lot of success on the table. But when I woke up every single morning, I was happy being me. I didn't have to think about, okay, who do I have to be for this person? And who do I have to be for that person? I was no longer a people pleaser. I was people pleasing myself. And the success congruently came and authentically came with that. What was that shift for you? Because I can imagine that was something similar where you were a people
Yeah.
pleaser and doing all those things for everybody else. When was that shift for you where you just said, fuck it, I'm going to be who I am. I'm going to rock my freak flag and I'm going to go out there and share my gifts.
Um, it may sound funny, but that was very recent for me. That's a very recent shift.
Nice.
Probably about 4 or 5 years ago, I started really focusing very heavily, prioritizing, I should say, right? I think I've always had a certain level of focusing on myself and in wanting to understand mindset and always being very reflective. But I think it wasn't until about 4 years ago that I made it a priority for myself. And in making it a priority, I recognize very quickly that I've spent a lot of my life hiding, right, who I am, and in an attempt, I think, to please and being thoughtful of what might be acceptable or not acceptable to other people, right? And so, for me, growing up, Asian, an immigrant, Muslim. There wasn't, I think I always felt very much like on the outside, like I was always standing on the outside looking in. And I was very fortunate in that I've always had lots of wonderful and beautiful people around me,
Nice.
who treated me with respect. So I didn't necessarily have to worry about that so much, but I always felt very different, and isolated. And so it was about 4 years ago in my healing journey where I recognized that, while I loved deeply so many other people and the people in my life, that the one person that I wasn't loving very much was myself.
Right. So what was the situation that caused you to shift and caused you to say, you know what, I'm not going to be that person I was anymore. I'm going to start to shift what it is that I'm doing. And what was the first thing that you had to do in order to love yourself? Because I think so many people struggle with that. I see that them loving their parents. I ask them, like, who do you love most in this world? And they'll say, oh, my husband, my kids, my mom, whatever. Not very often. I'd have to say maybe 2% of the time somebody says, I love me.
Yeah.
So many times, and I'll sit there and I'm like, do you love yourself? And I'm like, and this was a very poignant fact in, I'll tell you the story and then you can share that. I'll give you a chance to think about this. During COVID, I gave away a bunch of coaching sessions. It was my way of giving back to people who were sitting at home and struggling. And some of them were isolated from people. And I started hearing this voice in my head as I was giving out these free coaching sessions. And it said, ask them, do they love themselves? Yes or no? And this little voice, this little whisper. And so I was on Zoom calls and all of a sudden I thought to myself, when I almost asked it, I'm like, this is a stupid question. This person's going to look at me like I'm an idiot, right? I'm the no excuses coach. And I said, okay, I'm going to ask you a question. It's yes or no. And I don't want you to really think about it. I want you to give me your honest answer of how you feel in your heart. Do you love yourself? Yes or no? And the people, one after another, went, well, yeah, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Yeah, for the most part, they struggled with that.
Uncomfortable. It's so uncomfortable.
Yeah. And I was like, okay, let me shift. Then I heard another question that popped into my head and it said, okay, who do you love the most? Oh, I love my kid as an example. And I'm like, okay, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you love your kid? A 10. Okay. Now going back to you, how much do you love yourself? A 6. And I said, okay, now do you feel like you're giving your kid a 10 or are you giving your kid a 6? And then they just stopped and every single one of them, I'm not kidding, Dianne, went, oh shit, I see what you're saying. And I'm like, yeah, that's the thing we're missing in this world is we love everybody else and we're out there to do everything else for everybody, but we're not doing it for ourselves. So we're not giving out the best opportunity for people to really experience our true nature and our true love. So what was that journey like for you?
Yeah, I think for me, it was a culmination of things. I think it was a culmination of feeling like a victim
Right.
in much of my life. And then I think I got to this place specifically, coming out of a 12-year toxic marriage, let's just say. And coming out of that, I think I went from one extreme of being victim to, I'm just going to be a worrier now and I'm going to control everything, right? I'm going to, make sure that everything, I create the circumstances, I control how things go. And in trying to control everything and hardening myself, I exhausted myself in that journey. And I think I had a meltdown, right? I got really sick, because as you know, right, everything's connected, right? Our bodies feel everything that we're going through. Emotions are trapped in our bodies, and it was manifesting itself in lots of different ways. And it was when I started going for drives by myself early in the morning before the household woke up. I'm a mother of 3 children.
Nice.
And so I'd started going for a drive, and I was driving. It was like a 1-hour drive of myself to go on a hike. And I remember just crying for no reason. I didn't know why I was crying. And I remember just thinking to myself in that moment, like, Di, you need to make you a priority. There's something going on there that needs to come out, and you need to make you a priority. And I remember that, throughout my healing process or whatever, as I started journaling and just writing things like I am just something as simple as I am worthy, and that you're worthy of love, right? I'm worthy of good things. I'm worthy of blessings. I would just cry writing those things because they felt so uncomfortable and so foreign. And for me, that's probably been, a very difficult part of the journey. I know you asked how did I start that journey? And I think especially, I'm sure dads are the same, right? But as a mother,
Yeah.
um, having carried, I think, so much hurt and trauma and emotions and bottling it up for so long, controlling things for so long, I was exhausted between that and then working my full-time corporate job and operations where you're working lots of hours nonstop. I was going, and never taking care of myself. And I had found myself in a place of burnout. I was burnt
Yep.
out and I had nothing left to give and I was feeling broken. And I think it was that in that moment that I needed to create some breathing space for myself. And that started with gratitude, to be quite honest. It
Yeah.
started with the
Can you go
basics.
deeper on that gratitude? Because so many people are sitting there looking for what they don't have. Like, oh, once I have this, then I'll be happy. Once I have that, I'll be happy. What was that gratitude process for you? How can you go a little bit deeper on that?
Sure, absolutely. So in that moment, I knew that I needed to create something different for myself because what I was living wasn't serving me. And so I needed to change. In order to create change, to build anything, to create anything, you need something, right? You need resources to create, you need value to create. And if I was just thinking about what I didn't have, then I was lacking. I was leaving my self in a state of lacking. How can I
Yeah.
build from a state of lacking? And so I had to recognize for myself what I did have. And although I didn't have a lot of energy and it was very difficult at that time, it started with simple things like infusing gratitude in the things that were already happening in my day. So like every meal I ate, I told myself that before I eat, I'm going to be grateful for the food
Yeah.
that I ate, right? And then slowly by doing that every day, then I would tell myself, you know what? Every night before I go to bed, I'm just going to close my eyes and think about one thing that I could be grateful for that happened that day, right? And that became 2 things and 3 things. And then eventually I was waking up in the morning and holding gratitude for waking up in the morning and the breath in my lungs and, the sunshine that I could see out my window. And it grew from there, right? And so I think a lot of the times we psych ourselves out and we think it has to be this really complicated or robust dynamic plan, and it's really sometimes it's just very basic and starting very small with what's doable. And it's funny how it builds and it grows from there into so much
Mhm.
more.
That's what I was talking about. And thank you for sharing that. That's what I was talking about leading off the show was that 1%. That 1%. How can I take that imperfect action every single day and learn and grow as long as I go? Because when we look back on our life and we ask ourselves the question, when have I learned and grown the most? When life was easier, when life was challenging? Of course, when life was challenging, that's when we learned and grown the most. And that's where we apply the principles and the lessons in our life now, because we went through those experiences and hopefully we learned our lessons. And I think it's the same thing. It's like what you're talking about is being intentional. I'm going to be intentional. I'm going to be in the moment and say, wow, I'm really grateful for the fact my ceiling fan works. I'm going to be really grateful for this because here's what happens. And this is what I've proven even to myself recently is where your focus goes, energy flows. And so if you're constantly, again, looking at the scarcity, oh, I don't have this. And once I have that, then I'll be happy. Once I have that, then you're saying what right now is you don't have enough. And oftentimes if we think we don't have enough, and then God, source, universe will come and go, boom, I'm going to take your health. Boom, I'm going to take your kid. Boom, I'm going to take your house. Boom, I'm going to give you. And then you're going to realize, oh, wow, I really had a lot back then. I've had people tell me, like, I had a friend of mine who was on a colostomy bag and he said, Chris, just to be able to go to the bathroom normal, I took that for granted. And the fact that you talk about gratitude, the same thing happens in our life. Because if I tell people, like right now, if you guys are listening, well, you guys are obviously listening. If you're listening, what are you guys watching me? Let me read his lips.
Lip reading.
No, like look around your room right now. We can all do this. Look around your room and look at everything that's red. Red, 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 red. Okay. Now you go, yeah, Chris, I got everything that's red. I'm going to win this contest. Now tell me what was green. Well, Chris, I was looking for what was red. The same thing happens in our life. And that's why we have to be intentional and sit there and say, you know what? Fuck, I'm grateful for the breath I get to take. I was just playing with my son about an hour ago and we were playing zombies and all this other stuff. And he says, oh, come on, Dad, we have to go to bed. We're laying on the floor. And he's like, okay. And I know our sleep is going to last like 30 seconds. And I close my eyes and I'm like, and I just tell the God, source, universe, I'm not a religious person. I'm like, God, thank you for these moments right now. I'm so cool. I'm so grateful I get to spend this time with my 7-year-old, because in a minute he's going to be 17 and not want to do this. Absolutely. And so I'm just in those moments like saying thank you. And I wake up and I wake up and I sit up and I'm like, holy shit, I get to play with my kid. And I think that's what's so important is so many times we're sitting there thinking that our life is empty and our life will be fulfilled with something else, and it's not. But I imagine part of your journey, and thank you for sharing this with us. Sure. I'm sure part of your journey had to be taking a look at the people in your life. Like you kind of briefly mentioned the toxic husband. How much, talk to us about, maybe some people in your life, maybe you don't have to mention names, but that that situation where you had to sit there and say, okay, I'm no longer going to tolerate that. Because so oftentimes when we're not loving ourselves, we're tolerating toxic people in our life, we're allowing them to influence our judgment and everything else. What was that journey like for you to be able to sit there and say, okay, you know what, as part of my growth and as part of my self-love, I'm not going to accept this stuff anymore in my life?
Yeah. I will say that I've been very fortunate in my life and very blessed with a lot of love around me. And that, I mean, that is just a gift of grace, I think, from God, right? I can't think of too many toxic people in my life. But what I will say is that, especially thinking about my marriage, the most important thing I think was recognizing the ability that I have to choose who's in my life,
Yeah.
right? And so when I think about all of creation, we are the only creation, right, that's been given the gift of choice. And that's not a small gift, right? There's a lot of power in that. And I think for me in that marriage, I spent 12 years feeling like I didn't have choice or choosing to accept that I was powerless.
Mhm.
And it wasn't until I recognized that I did have a choice that I could then create change. And I think that's very important for people to recognize that until you own something, you can't change it. Right. And so it starts with owning it. It starts with recognizing that you have a piece in it. What is that piece? Because it's very easy and very tempting, I think, to get stuck in the other person's or the other people's pieces.
If only
And
they were like this, then I would be. Yeah.
that's a trap, right? I mean, it's okay to acknowledge, right, that there's things that are not right in a relationship, right? But ultimately you can't control anybody but yourself. And so really the starting place is recognizing the piece that I own, right? Which often starts with our choice and then and moving from there. So I don't know. I think that was super helpful for me. I think the other thing that I would say that's really changed the dynamic of relationships for me a lot. And it's so funny how um, life sends you different lessons at different stages in your life as you're
Oh
going through
yeah.
things, right?
First it starts as a tap, then a little tap, and then a punch, and then
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. But as part of I think my reflection, I've been having some great conversations with a circle of women for the past 2 weeks, and we've been talking a lot about compassion and just conflict, compassion, and blame, right? And how easy it is for us to jump to blaming people. And the reality is that whenever there's a conflict there, quite often, right, there's an unmet need happening somewhere in that dynamic, right? For whoever's been triggered. That's why we're triggered. That's why we're arguing. There's
Right.
really an unmet need. And it's been funny in the past 2 weeks since kind of engaging in that conversation. I've been reflecting on a lot of my relationships and a lot of different interactions. And when you step back and think about not only what your own unmet need is and how it's manifesting in that conflict, but you start to also think about then what might their unmet need be. And it allows you, I think, to shift from blame to a position of compassion a little
Yeah.
bit differently. And that in itself, I think, changes the dynamic of a relationship. Right? I know for me in particular, I had a very, since we're being transparent so that we can all learn and grow together,
Thank
right?
you.
You're welcome. I had a really not difficult conversation, but it was the first time in many years that I had to actually engage, right, with my ex, um, in a way that allowed me to protect my boundaries,
Good.
but at the same token, I think find a way to show compassion because I know that um, behind a lot of the conflict, right, that we'd experienced are a lot of wounds and unmet needs, right? That, we're all at different places in our learning journey, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's helpful when we can understand that about people because if we allow ourselves to jump into blame, we perpetuate, right? We perpetuate the cycle of wound and hurt, and it doesn't move us any closer, right? And it's toxic for them, toxic for us. So, but
Mhm.
yeah.
So, and I want to catch a couple. I want to catch a couple of these comments. Blah. I should not have ate before I did this. We got Debbie Bettendorf in the house. What's up, Debbie? Hello, Christopher and Diane. Thank you, darling, for joining us. Debbie is amazing. You need to check out her show. She also says here, when you truly love yourself, you are not convinced by others that you aren't good enough. You know, you are loving yourself, and also goes hand in hand with confidence, 100%. When I think about
Absolutely.
my life, I didn't love myself. I had zero self-confidence when I was growing up. I, unfortunately, opposite to you, I did not have a whole heck of a lot of love in my life. Didn't have physical attention, physical affection. I was basically raising myself from the age of 7 on up, then homeless at 13, and then, tried to kill myself and all these unfortunate things. And then ultimately got to the point in my life where I said, okay, I have to put myself first. I have to put myself first. Otherwise, I'm going to wind up in jail. I'm going to wind up dead, or I'm going to wind up insane. I have to take responsibility for my life. And I had to make some really, really tough decisions. And so many times people don't want to make those tough decisions because it's going to hurt and it's going to be hard. And so many times every single day I hear, but Chris, it's going to be hard and it's going to take forever. And it's going to be, I'm like, yeah, but on the other side of that, it's going to be worth it. It's going to be worth it, because on the other side of that pain and that hardship and that heartache and everything else is the feeling like, holy crap, I did that. I did that on my own. I shifted my thinking. I started saying I am statements. I started waking up and feeling gratitude in my life. I started cutting toxic people out of my life. I started, impacting other people in my life. I started running away from who I thought I was supposed to be. And progressively, I start to get this confidence, and I start to help other people, and I start to live my true legacy. And we start to light up like your smile right now. I can feel the energy of your smile because I know it's emanating from love. And I know that for me, one of the biggest things that I had to stop doing in my life was stop giving myself excuses. Hence the no excuses. My coach asked me years ago, she goes, why are you still here, Chris? Like, really, why are you still here? If, in as minimal amount of words as possible, why are you still here? And I said, I never gave myself excuses, and I never stopped. Like, literally, I was a 7th grade dropout. I went back, got my GED. I think I got that within 6 months. I went to get my AA. I took the first class, and then 12 years later, I got my master's degree. And so everything in my life, when I look back on it, I just never stopped. I never gave myself the excuse. If I didn't have what it is that I needed, I became resourceful. And so many of us don't think we have the ability to have those resources, because we come up with those excuses and we have those self-imposed limitations. And then we sit there and we wonder why we're miserable. And then we play the someday game. Someday when this happens, and someday when that happens, then I'll be happy. Then I'll take those risks. Some days when, but we're sitting here today because you and I sat there and said, no, I'm not going to tolerate this anymore. What was your biggest excuse in your life? And then how did you overcome that?
So in full honesty,
No, lie to me, baby. Lie to me.
There are 2 times in my life where I think, I'm not one who is quick, I think, to jump at change, right? I've carried a lot of
Why not?
responsibilities in my
Why not?
life. So I think being the oldest child, right, in my family, I think being a mother of 3 children, I just carry those responsibilities very tightly, and I always want to make sure that I'm serving them. But at the same token, I've often used that, I think, as a crutch,
Yeah.
right, for playing it safe. And both times, whether it was leaving my marriage or leaving my corporate career, um, once I got to the other end, and you look back, it's always like, why did you wait so long? Like, why were you dragging your feet for
I
so
wish I
long,
would have done
right?
it sooner. I wish I would have done it
Exactly.
sooner. Yep.
Exactly. But I think really what the turning point for me, or the realization that I've come to, is you get to a place where I remember in my career, feeling burnt out and just overwhelmed, and knowing that I needed to work on myself, but knowing that I couldn't heal in the capacity that I was in, and so I needed to create space for myself to heal. And it got to a place where, even though it was scary, the idea of not taking action, the idea of not creating the change that I needed, in another year, another 2 years, another 5 years going by,
Yeah.
and still feeling this, because these things that I was feeling, I had felt 3 years prior to that, 5 years prior to that.
And you're just carrying it around, right? You're just like, oh God.
Yeah.
It's almost like a badge of honor. Like, look at all the excuses and all the pain that I have.
Yeah, exactly. And so I didn't want to feel that anymore. The fear of feeling that 5 years from now was not tolerable. And so I think it gave me the courage to change. And then the other piece was, if I loved my kids enough to provide for them, it also allowed me to think about the example that I was setting for them. Right. And so I'm blessed, right? I have 3 beautiful children. They're all gifted and creative in their own ways. And there's so much for them to accomplish in this world, and I would hate for them to ever think that they should settle. right? And if I didn't want them to do that, and I wanted them to be brave about standing in their gifts, in their power, then I needed to model that. And so, hard or not, that's what I needed to do. So
that became the leverage. I want to point that out to
yeah,
everybody who's watching and listening right now.
why?
That became the leverage. When you have a big enough why, you have a big enough
Yeah,
how. And like I said before, my legacy, when I sat there and thought, okay, if I died tomorrow, what would they say? Who would show up and what would they say? I was like, okay, that's embarrassing. I don't want that to happen. So that became the leverage for me to go home and handwrite my eulogy, which was super uncomfortable. I didn't want to think about death, but I wrote my eulogy, and when I read it out loud, I started crying, and I realized, I'm like, holy shit, to be able to fulfill that legacy is pretty powerful. What can I start to do today? How can I live in that legacy to fight for what's right and what's fair and risk for which that matter to make this world a better place? And I was already a coach. I was already a speaker. I hadn't started podcasting or radio shows at that point yet. But it gave me that inspiration to sit there and say, okay, every single day I'm going to set the intention, like we said before, is to fulfill that why. So at least one time today, I'm going to use my words and my actions to make this world a better place. Because tonight, and I used to start thinking this a long time ago, because tonight I want to go to bed and I want to say, what can I reflect upon and be most proud of? So if I have this big enough why, I've got this how, and at night I'm going to go home and I'm going to recap on that. I'm not going to sit there and watch the news and follow politics because I was going to bed angry and pissed off and resentful. I'm going to go to bed feeling like, okay, I'm proud and I'm confident and I'm accomplished and I'm fighting for what's right and what's fair, and reflect upon those things, and then wake up in the morning and feel gratitude for, like, okay, what do I get to do today?
yeah,
And so many times we're just trying to survive. I hear all the time, Chris, I'm just trying to survive. I'm just trying to get through. And it's amazing when we sit there and hold ourselves to a higher standard, which is what you did, for that bigger reason, to set the example for your kids. Then it almost gives us that validation to say, yes, I can take those risks.
yeah.
And so many times people don't want to take risks. Let's talk about a time in your life where you were looking at something, perhaps when you talked about earlier about leaving your corporate job. What did that feel like? How do we help other people who are watching this tonight get out of that comfort zone, get out of that desire for, okay, I need certainty in my life. I need certainty. I need it to be safe. I need it to be comfortable, because all that's going to lead to is regrets. Talk to us about the time, perhaps, or another time, where you took a big risk, and talk to us about what you learned and what you did to prepare yourself mentally to be successful in that.
No, absolutely. I think the shift in leaving from corporate to become an entrepreneur is probably a great example. Probably one of the scariest things that I ever had to do. There are moments where I woke up and I remember, after communicating and giving my notice, thinking, "Holy shit, what are you doing? Are you out of your mind? Like, what are you doing?" But it was leading up to it. I think it was having a lot of conversations with myself. You talked a lot about intention,
Yeah.
and every morning I was setting kind of intentions with what I wanted to accomplish in my day, what I wanted my life to look like. And it got to a point for myself where every day when I would log in, I felt like I was betraying my ultimate purpose. And that became heavy, right? And so it started with thinking, all right, I can't make the full shift just yet, but what can I do? I think a lot of times we fall into this trap of needing to have the whole plan figured out, and
Yeah.
just recognizing that I don't need to have the whole plan. I may never see the whole plan all at once. I need to just find what's one step. And if I
Yep.
take that one step, or that doesn't matter how small it was. So sometimes it was just watching a podcast about somebody else who took the leap, right, to entrepreneurship, and just hearing other people doing it created evidence for me that it was possible, that it was doable, right? Then maybe it was just reading an article about how to file an LLC. I'm curious what that looks like, what goes into it. And so small steps, I think every step made it feel more real. Every step got me a little bit closer, made it feel a little less scarier, and was just evidence that other people have done it. It's doable, right? You just have to do it. Um, and it also challenged me to uncover the real reasons that I was holding back, right? So none of these kind of other excuses, but the real deep-seated reasons underneath it about maybe not believing in myself, right? Questioning my worth. Those were the real reasons, right? And the other things, they were important, right? But those were easier reasons to tell people than it was to say that I was questioning myself. I was doubting
Mm.
myself. And so I think this journey, or what made this journey really challenging, and probably one of the most challenging journeys of my life, was it required a lot of honesty with myself.
Yeah. What you've said so far tonight, I want to recap this for people who are listening and watching, and this is super important. I call it the AAA effect. Awareness, you became aware.
Mhm.
You accepted the situation, and it's not necessarily accepting blame for a situation. It's just accepting the situation for it is what it is. I'm aware of the situation. I'm like accepting of the situation, because so many times we won't accept it. So therefore we won't take the third A, which is action. And what you've done, you've demonstrated in your life throughout this conversation tonight, is awareness, acceptance, and action. Awareness and acceptance and action. And like I said before, when I let off the show, that imperfect action. So many times, like you said, we're waiting for that perfect situation because we don't want to make a mistake. We don't want to fail. But I encourage people to change their perspective, change your perspective about this. Mistakes are opportunities. Mistakes are stepping stones. Problems are opportunities. It's like when you shift your perspective and realize, wow, this is something that I get to overcome. This is something that I get to challenge myself with. This is something that I get to realize my true self and my true nature about this, instead of sitting on the sidelines, hoping, wishing, and praying that somebody else is going to come save me or give me the immediate cure. I'm going to take that risk and I'm going to jump. Because Steve Harvey talks about it. For you guys listening and watching, I keep saying that, I don't know why, because everybody's watching and listening. Steve Harvey, the comedian, has a video out there called Jump. It's about 1 minute and 30 seconds. My coach gave it to me, and you've seen it, right?
Yes,
And
yes.
it talks about, everybody's like, oh, that person's going to the south of France. That person's living their dream. That person quit their job. Well, that person jumped. And that person, and he talks about it, he goes, when you jump, he goes, your parachute's not going to open right away. Your back's going to get scraped up. You're going to get dings, and you're going to be like, oh my God, what am I doing? But your parachute will eventually open. But so many people sit there and they never jump. And he talks about that. My coach had me watch that, and I was like, wow. I'm not going to be the guy that doesn't jump. I'm not going to be the guy that gets to my 70s and 80s and looks back on my life and goes,
What did I do?
there are so many opportunities I didn't take. There were so many opportunities where I could have jumped and experienced and lived life, because so many people are watching and observing and not really truly living the experience, that it's sad. And it's sad. And I see so many people, like you said before, come to me and I coach them for 6 months, and they're like, oh my God, I wish I would have done this sooner. I wish I would have taken this leap sooner. I wish I would have let that person go out of my life sooner. I wish I would have loved myself sooner. I wish I wouldn't have sought perfection sooner. And ultimately, we don't want to get to the end of our life and have regrets.
Yeah.
So let's kind of go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think one thing that's really I think for anyone who finds themselves in that place where they're just really fearful, I think, of scary, like everything's scary, change, right? I think even if we're not ready to take those big leaps, right? Even if you just find little small things that are scary, right? Like maybe it's just trying something new, maybe it's just speaking your voice, but even just finding small things outside of the norm that feel uncomfortable, because it builds our tolerance for being uncomfortable, right? And it helps us to build some credibility and evidence for ourselves that, look, you did that. That wasn't so bad, right? Now you feel a little bit more confident going in and doing something a little bit more scarier,
It's
So
true. It's true.
it's
So
important.
shifting gears a little bit, what's the big thing that's scary for you right now? Like what's the big fear? What's the next thing that you're going to do to take that risk in your life to kind of jump into the next phase of who Dianne is?
Yeah. So it's a great question.
Thank you.
So right now, yeah, great question. Um, right now, a lot of the entrepreneur work that I've been doing has really been around trying to help around leadership development, right? And so we talked a little bit about helping people find their power. And
Right.
so leaders in particular, I find, are in a very unique position to touch many lives, right? And so my focus has been really on a lot of business consulting, right? Operational efficiencies, helping people, employee engagement, employee experience, and leadership experience. But I'm at this place in the past few months now, I think, as I've been just reflecting a lot and recognizing that beyond the workplace, there are, I think, a lot of people who would benefit from some of the experiences that I've been through. Um, and how do I share that in a very unique way? And so, more than talking about it, for me in particular, what I find I really thrive, like, how you pay attention to yourself and you kind of notice where you come alive and what you're kind of drawn to. And for me, it's always kind of the experience, not just like the what happens, but how it happens. And
Right.
so in my mind, I've got these visions of these really intimate, small setting experiences, taking people through the journey of victim to warrior, and then that balance to surrender. Um, and so that they can achieve balance in their life. And how do we talk about the tools at the various stages? How do we share our experiences? Because I think there's something super powerful that comes in sharing. And we're all at different stages in the journey, and we need to hear, right, those stages, because I think we build off of each other, we help each other. And so that is extremely vulnerable. It's kind of scary to think about sharing, but it also lights me up. And so figuring out how to make that a reality, I think, is what's on my list.
So what's the biggest challenge in that? What's like the first thing that you need to do in order to make that happen?
The first thing I need to do to make that happen is I need to plot out kind of the logistics and what I think it would look like, and not needing it to be perfect, but I think maybe finding a small setting that I can do a small version of it and just experience it, right? I think experience that fear of letting all your guard down and being completely vulnerable with people, and creating space, I think, for them to be vulnerable so that we can heal together. And then from that, understanding, right? Because I think that power will help propel me and give me the motivation, that why, right? To get
Right.
past some of the fears and navigating some of the other technical stuff so that I can figure out how I can make that better, bigger.
Nice. I mean, it's all about those taking that imperfect action, and really for people. I'm not going to say that. I don't know why I keep saying that, but it's really about visualizing. It's about
Yeah.
having that vision, because so oftentimes our mind doesn't know real reality versus perceived reality. And so like we have a bad dream, we wake up and we're like, oh my God, I was just being chased, or I was just falling. And we wake up and we have the physical manifestations. So our mind can play this movie script on us that will appear to be reality. And for us to be able to, in order to take those bigger leaps, I subscribe to the fact, and I tell my clients this, is you have to visualize in your brain every single day. See yourself in that position. See yourself walking on stage in front of that crowd. See yourself in that intimate setting with those CEOs and those leaders. See yourself in those situations, and play that movie over and over and over again. And then, like you said before, take that progressive action. Like sit there and say, okay, I'm going to map out 3 strategies, 3 steps that I can take, that I'm willing to take in the next 2 weeks. And that how can I sit there and visualize that? What are going to be some of the obstacles? So what do you think would be some of the obstacles in this situation for you to achieve this new dream of yours?
I think because it's very personal, perfection will probably creep in, right? Wanting it to be perfect.
What
But
if it
knowing,
didn't have to be perfect? What would that feel like? Would it be like, oh geez, I'm going to do this right now?
um, I don't know that I would do right now, but I could probably do it a lot quicker than right now. Than, like holding up, waiting for it to be perfect.
Where does the drive for perfection come from? Does that come from your parents? Does that come from your mentor? Where does that, talk to us a little bit about that? Because I know that so many people are struggling with that. I know I did, because of my mom. My mom, everything had to be perfect. Everything had to be right. You couldn't be wrong. If you were wrong, you were an idiot or stupid. So everything in my life, okay, it's got to be perfect. And I would kill and stress myself out for it to be perfect, when I would realize it's okay if it's got flaws. It's okay if people see the vulnerable side of me and see that I'm not always so strong, because I can make a deeper connection. So that perfection started to waste away. And then I started taking that imperfect action, and I started succeeding way beyond measure compared to what I was doing when I was trying to be perfect. So where did that come for you, that perfection?
I think it started probably young. I had very hardworking parents who loved us a lot, and I think believed in a lot of our potential, right? And I know that it comes from a place of love, right? But I think unconsciously, what we don't realize is that I think as children, when you can't necessarily understand, right, what's happening, right, we tend to interpret that as a condition of validation, or a condition of worth.
Right.
Um, and so I think I've had to really work around that. There's also a piece of it, I think, that I've in working through my own journey, in recognizing that the perfection is almost a fear, right? This fear of, if it's not perfect, then people won't see the value in it. And then if they don't see the value in it, then it will mean that it wasn't like it wasn't helpful, it wasn't worthy, right? Like, what was I sharing from it, right? And kind of learning for myself to how to surrender to the outcome, and really just focusing on the effort of putting it out there, and trusting, right, that it will find its message or its way to the right people, right, in the right environment. But so self-worth, right, and self-love, I think, are 2 big components to it.
It's true. I mean, it really is true. When you think about when you left corporate, was everything perfect when you left corporate?
No, not at all. Are you kidding me? Oh,
Ah,
hell
so
no,
you've
it
done
was
it
not.
before.
I have done it before. So there's evidence of me
Yeah, that's what you're
surviving that
looking for.
imperfection. Exactly, exactly. And so I think talking even about like the visualization, right? Just visualizing for myself the person who's, if I envision the person who's hosting an event like that, um, how does she feel What does she think? What is the actions
Right.
that she takes, right? And then really focusing on how do I become her, right? One step at a time, one person, one decision at
Can
a
we
time.
take that one step further?
Sure.
Okay, let's imagine in our mind's eye, it's 3 years from now. We're having this conversation on July 30th, 2024. So 3 years from now, it's 2027. I'm having you back on the show. Like, welcome back to the show, Dianne Bennnett. We had this great conversation before. You were talking about doing these things. Talk to me about what's going on today
What's going on
in
today?
real time. So we're in 2027. We're talking about the last 3 years. Where is Dianne Bennnett today?
Dianne Bennnett today is crying in the morning, tears of joy,
Okay.
because it's hard to believe, right? How far she's come. I think I'm excited every morning about working with small groups of people in very unique spaces and building really intimate relationships with people who now feel a sense of purpose that maybe they didn't feel before. Not only a sense of purpose, but a sense of courage to walk in that purpose. And I'm excited about, it's setting goals of large numbers of people. So let's see, 3 years from now, right? I would love to say that I've had these sessions or these small intimate relationships built with over 1,000 people would be a great goal.
Yeah. So what were the first things you had to do, Dianne, to get to this point?
To get to 2027?
Yeah. So we're in 2027 right now. What were the things you had to do back in 2024 to get here?
I needed to map out what I want this event to look like, high
One.
level and buckets, right? Then I need to find a handful of people who
2.
want to come. And then I don't need to find the perfect place, just a small place that we can sit down and share. Sit down and
So
share.
how realistic is it to do that today?
I can't do that today, at least not right now today. But
And not but, and
I can't do it today. I can do it though. Let's say I can map out the logistic or the buckets for what I want to do, probably in the next week, 2 weeks. I can reach out to a few people that I know that I think would really find value from it and ask them to maybe identify anyone else that might find value in it. And you know what? Rather than even finding a place for it, I think maybe I'll do this first session virtually just so that we can walk through it. And then I can do the next session in person.
You got to go back and watch this video because your face is lighting up right now.
Yeah.
You're
I'm
like,
excited.
ooh, ladies, can you guys see it? Like, ooh. She's like, I just transported myself to 2027. I just lived 3 years and I just accomplished all my shit. Dianne, this has been an amazing conversation. I can't thank you enough for your vulnerability, for your transparency. This is what this show is all about. It's about us having this real conversation so the people watching and listening can go, you know what? Those motherfuckers did it. I can do it.
I could do it too. That's right. They can do it. They can. There's no excuses.
No excuses. So if you had, well, you do have a microphone, you have a microphone to the world. What are some things you would share with people right now as we close out the show to really take ownership of their life, to really get themselves out of that victim mindset and into that warrior mindset as you talk about it? What are some things people can realistically do and challenge themselves maybe in the course of the next couple of months?
I think the first thing that I would challenge everyone to do is to wake up in the morning and be grateful for the breath that they have in their lungs, to look in the mirror and tell themselves that I love you and you got something special to bring the world. And then to just do one small thing every day that gets you closer, whether that's saying hi to someone that, who knows, right? Having a conversation with someone new. Maybe it's reading a small article. Maybe it's just doing something uncomfortable so that I'm conditioning myself for doing hard things. Right? But ultimately, it's believing in themselves, believing that they're worthy, and then believing that they're capable.
It's funny you say believe because it's on my wristbands that I sell. It says believe. And that's one of the key words. When I think about my life, I always believed that no matter my situation I was in, that there was something more. that there was something more. If I could just continue to scratch a little bit, there was something more, and there was something more. And that's how I went back, got my GED, and went and got my AA degree, then my bachelor's degree, then my master's degree, and was successful. It was like, there's more. I couldn't have gone through all this shit not to have more in my life. And that's what we're talking about, is just being able to wake up every day with that sincerity and that heart, that ultimately the time that we're born and the time we pass, that little dash right there, that we live fully and that we embrace fully and we love fully. And we sit there and we come out of this experience going, you know what, I'm all the better for it. Absolutely. And I'm not going to sit there and allow myself to stay stagnant and to stay stuck because of what other people have said about me and what other people think of me. That's all bullshit. Most people are thinking about themselves. They're not thinking about us. And we waste so much time worrying about, oh, what are they going to say? And what are they going to think? And then we're like, well, those people are living their best lives, or they're not. It doesn't matter what they're doing. It matters what we get to do. And so I can't thank you enough. How can people continue the conversation with you, my dear?
Absolutely. So LinkedIn, you can find me on LinkedIn. Dianne Bennnett. Again, you got my link up there.
Can you spell your name, just because there's different variations of Dianne and different variations of Bennnett?
Dianne with 2 N's, right? And then Bennnett, 2 N's and 2 T's. Dianne, Bennnett, B as in boy, Ennett. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on Facebook or Instagram. Full Hearts Leadership and Consulting is the name of my business. And there's my email. You can reach me. And you know what? I will give you my phone number. I'm all about conversations, right? Where people, if you ever want to talk, if you want to bounce ideas off of each other, share, maybe you just need someone to listen. 203-715-5715. That is my cell phone number. You can reach me directly. And it's funny, I was just thinking as you were talking, Christopher, but we all struggle with self-care so much. And I realized that the reason that we struggle with self-care is because underneath caring for ourselves is this message of, or this belief of being worthy, right? In deserving love and needing to be cared for. And that's not easy for us, because I think a lot of us struggle with that. And so self-care might be a great first place to start, right? In choosing, right, to care for ourselves and love ourselves. So anyway.
You are amazing, my dear. This has been such a phenomenal conversation. I encourage people, if you guys came in halfway through the conversation, go back and check it out from the beginning. Take notes, take action. I'm going to place you backstage, my dear. Don't go anywhere, because I still want to have a conversation with you, but I'm going to close out the show.
Sure. Thank you, everyone, so much. So much love.
You're a rock star. Yay. And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. What an impactful conversation. I mean, seriously, I mean, take her up on her offer. 1-203-715-5715. That is her cell phone number. It'll be in the show notes if you're listening to this on the podcast and driving. What a phenomenal story. And I want to go a little bit deeper on what she just said right now, the self-care aspect. So many times you guys are out there, and I was guilty of this, is that we're running on empty. We're running on fumes. We're taking care of everybody else. I'm so exhausted. I'm so tired. I'm so this. I call it the 5: hydration, nutrition, sleep, exercise, and vitamin D. All of them relatively inexpensive. Hydration, drink half your body weight in ounces of water. So many guys are not drinking water. Your body is like 80% water. If you're not drinking water, you don't feel very good. You're not making very good decisions. You're feeling tired. You're going to your short-term gratifications. You're creating this vicious cycle of failure, because you're not even just drinking enough water to saturate your body to make your organs feel better, make your brain feel better. Your brain fog starts to go away. Your sleep starts to get better. Your skin feels better. Your sleep. I have an Aura ring. I track my sleep. And so you need deep sleep. You need REM sleep. And so many times people are just getting light sleep. They're eating before they go to bed. They're drinking before they go to bed. And they think that they sleep throughout the night. But if you don't get any deep sleep, you're not getting restorative sleep. And then if you're not getting restorative sleep, you're not repairing yourself, and you're winding up. You go to bed exhausted, and you wake up tired. You should wake up and feel like, oh my God, I got a good night's rest, right? Rest. Hydration, nutrition. You know what? I can't afford it, Chris. I know food's so expensive. Yes, I totally get it. Can you afford the medications later? Can you afford the doctor visits later? Can you afford to be on 12 different medications? I know somebody who used to take care of themselves. They got lazy and had these excuses. Now they're on 12 different medications, and they are overweight, and now they don't even have the energy to work out. And it's this vicious cycle. And I have a fear that they're not going to make it to 65 years old. And that's ridiculous. Do you want to sit there and go, well, now I got to buy all these medications, and now I'm in terrible health, and now I potentially, erased 15, 20 years off of my life? It's not worth it. It's better to figure it out, get a second job, do something, and be able to afford that nutrition in your body. Exercise, getting exercise, raising your heart rate, going do interval training, do something. There's so many exercises you can Google that are free. You don't need a gym. You don't need weights. You can do it on a chair. You can go out for a walk. You can start with a mile. You can go to 2 miles. You can start jogging. You can start running. There's all these different things to do. And then there's vitamin D, getting sunshine on your face, starting your day with sunshine on your face, sunshine in your eyes, start to reset your internal clock. You can Google all this shit. I personally take a vitamin D supplement because I found out that even though I get sunlight every day when I walk my dog, I did a vitamin deficiency test and I found out I was deficient in vitamin D. So now I take a supplement. And guess what? When you take care of those 5 areas of your life and you self-love and self-medicate yourself with richness and greatness, then you start to feel better and you start to do better and you start to accomplish things and you stop holding yourself back and you stop tolerating the bullshit in your life and you start succeeding and you start taking that imperfect action. And like I challenged Dianne with, you start visualizing your success and you say, what can I do today? What can I do right now? What's the little thing I can do right now? I can watch a YouTube video on somebody who left their career. I can do this. I can do this. I have to believe in myself. I have to believe it's possible. The power of perhaps, ladies and gentlemen, the power of perhaps is a paramount. And really catch what it is that you're saying to yourself. That's how I coach a lot of people is I change the words that they say to themselves. Oh, I can't do it. That means you won't, right? Stop the excuses, stop the toleration, stop limiting yourself, and go out there and surround yourself, get a coach, get mentors, get people on your side that will hold you accountable every single week. I have a group accountability coaching program. It's phenomenal. It's tremendously affordable. It's my way of giving back. Every single month, we have 2 Zoom meetings a month. You have an accountability partner. We have a private Facebook group page. And people are accomplishing their dreams. You can go to my website and you can see all the testimonials there, video testimonials of people saying, fuck, this is changing my life. Or you can keep doing what you're doing and hoping, wishing, and praying that something else changes. Up to you, totally, entirely. But if you're here, when they say when the student's ready, the teacher appears. So if your first time watching it, perhaps this is a sign and an educational move for you to start taking that next step in your life, because it is your life, ladies and gentlemen. Like Bon Jovi said, it's my life. And, as we continue to go throughout this year, we've got some phenomenal guests coming up. Next week, we got a phenomenal show coming up. I've got a solo show the week after that. I'm going to be doing some coaching and some training. So put it on your calendar for August 13th. You want to show up. If you want, you can send me some situations and challenges that you have right now, and I will coach you through them here on the show. I won't bring you on the show, but I'll coach your situation or your challenge with you over the show. It's my way of giving back for supporting the show. So again, subscribe to the show, go to the YouTube channel. All the information's in the show notes, and I would love for your support. And please share this out if you got value out of it, and I know you did. And we'll be back here next week. So go live your life, share the show out, tell me what it is that I can do for you, and we'll continue to make this world a better place for who we are, what we do, what we say. And so I love you guys. I appreciate every single one of you from the 27 plus countries, wherever we're at. Go out there, be brilliant. Let's make the world a much loving, more inclusive place. Okay? Can we do that? All right.